April baseball is really weird. At one point today, I thought the Angels should fire their manager. And now they're in a situation where they could be in first place by themselves in less than 24 hours. This is Locked On MLB.
You are Locked On MLB. Your daily MLB podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, baseball fans, and welcome to Locked On MLB, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. This is the daily podcast. We talk about all of Major League Baseball. I am your host, Paul Francis Sullivan. There's my lower third. You can call me Sully. I am an Emmy-nominated television producer who has been a baseball podcaster for well over a decade now. This is my fifth full season here on the Locked On Podcast Network. I try to give you a podcast as often as I possibly can. This is yet another week where I'm delivering you 6 episodes in this week. 6 episodes. By the way, this episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Follow us at Locked On MLB Pods on Twitter or on Instagram. I'm your pal Sully. I'm at Sully Baseball on Twitter. You can read it there. Sully Baseball Podcast on Instagram. I forgot what social media platform I was talking about. I love day baseball. I love day baseball during the week. I love day baseball in California because games start at 9:30, 10 o'clock in the morning. It's wonderful. As I mentioned, as some of you may know, I have 2 jobs. One job is to be here as the impresario of Locked On MLB, and the other is I am a special education teacher in the luxurious and cosmopolitan metropolis of Pasadena, California. I have a kid in my class. I love my students. There's a couple of students who are very big Dodger fans. Unfortunately, I can't show Dodger games when they're playing a day game like they did today because it's blacked out. That's real smart. But I have another kid who's like me, and he's a wonderful boy who's he's a student of mine. He's a very friendly kid. He's in my class because he is on the spectrum, but he loves sports, and we talk. He loves basketball, and when he comes in every morning, I brush up on my basketball playoffs information because he's a big Laker fan, and he loves the Dodgers, but he's like me in that he likes all of baseball. And so, like the other day during lunch, sometimes during lunch we'll have videos playing and everything like that. If they want to sit in the classroom, I don't care. We'll play some videos there, during a lunch break. But he came in there along with a couple other aides, and he said to me, and I'm not going to do an impersonation of his voice because that's not fair, but he said, "Well, a little bit." He said, "So, can we watch baseball?" And I said, "Well, I can't put on the Dodger game." He said, "That's okay. Is there another game?" And I said, "Well, the Diamondbacks are playing the Royals." He said, "That'll be fun." I want this kid in my class for the next. I'll hold him back. I want him in my class. We sat down, and during lunchtime, I had my lunch. He had his, and me and my buddy were hanging out, watching the Royals play the Diamondbacks. And at one point, I asked him, "You ever been to Kansas City?" He said, "No." "Have you ever been to Arizona?" I said, "No." "So you a fan of either of these teams?" He said, "No." "So do you want me to show something else?" I said, "No, I want to watch baseball." They put him in the right class. Well, today there was a bunch of day games that were playing, and obviously I wanted to play the Dodgers and the Pirates because they're Dodger fans in my class. I teach in freaking Pasadena, but it didn't turn out that way. But we got to see Connor Joe wound up hitting a home run. Castro hit a home run, and the Pirates remain red hot, and the Dodgers are at 500. It's April. I'm going to talk a little, as I teased at the top, we're going to talk a little bit about the dynamic of baseball in April. Counts just as much as it does in September, but it can also give you a whiplash. But the Pirates, hey, I said this over and over again. If you want to have a surprise season, you're better off building on a foundation of a winning record as opposed to trying to come back. And the Pirates have won 9 of their last 10 games. They're 18-8. They're already 10 games above 500. And even though the Michaelis and the Cardinals won this afternoon against San Francisco, the Cardinals are 8 games behind the Pirates. That's not an insignificant amount of games to be the absolute consensus pick to win the division and be more than a week of games behind the Pirates. Anyway, and with that, the Dodgers are 500 again. I'm going to be doing things, by the way, on either this Sunday or Monday show. I'm going to be doing a thing where we're taking a look at where teams were at the end of April in the last bunch of years, because the next show I'm going to do is going to be May 1st. So April will be in our rearview mirror, and I want to just sort of take a look and say, okay, before we get too excited about the standings in April, let's see, what it means and what it doesn't mean. But either way, if you're a Pirate fan, you're going into May with something interesting to happen, going on. If you were a Braves fan, here's the deal. And I know you should take note of a couple of things here or there, because let's say the Braves and the Mets go down to the wire. And right now, 2 games separate them. And obviously, we know the Phillies were a playoff team last year. If one game winds up separating the Braves and another division title, remember April 27th, when they had a 4-0 lead in the 9th inning at home, and the Marlins put up a 5-spot with Cooper's 2-out, 2-run, 2-strike double being the game, to put the game away. So just remember this day. Remember this day if you're a Braves fan and you come up short. You probably will long have forgotten about this game. But still, it counts just as much. If the Mariners, now look at this, I'll give you an example, because in the second segment, I am going to break down a little bit of what happened with the Angels, because I got whiplash from today's game with the Angels. Today's Angels game was like a Russian novel. It was so bizarre. I've mentioned some of the dumb losses that the Angels had, games which you're like, you had no business losing that game. The Mariners lost a game today, and it wasn't a dumb loss, even though George Kirby of the Mariners threw a complete game, but the final score was 1-0. So he went the distance, but they lost 1-0. I'll tell you why that's not a dumb game. That's just a well-pitched game. That was just the Phillies and the Mariners just locked antlers. And as it turned out, you know what? Strahm pitched well into the 6th. They brought out the parade of relievers, and Kimbrel, remember him? Kimbrel wound up getting the save for Philadelphia. And the Mariners, that's a frustrating loss, a little bit of a teeth grinder, but you're going to lose games like that. You're going to, every once in a while, you just got to say, hey, they outpitched us. They outpitched us. That's a major league win. It's when you wet the bed, like the Braves did against the Marlins, just allowing them to chip away and chip away and chip away. That, to me, that's the difference between just a major league loss and a dumb loss. The Mets allowed the Nationals to come back. That was on the verge of being a dumb loss, especially when the Nats put up that 5 spot in the 5th inning. For is it Batty or Brett Batty? I don't know. The Mets came back and won the game. They could look in the mirror and go, "Oh boy, we dodged one. We dodged one." By the way, eventually we're gonna have Nick Ronska of Locked On White Sox back on the show. We've been promising to have him back on. Wow, I was hoping, because I like the White Sox. I like a lot of the players of the White Sox. I like Tim Anderson. I like Eloy Jimenez. I like a lot of the White Sox. I like and when Jose Abreu was on the team, Jose Abreu was one of my favorite players. I was really hoping that the removal of Tony La Russa and having a unified manager, general manager situation with the White Sox was going to turn things around. And again, it's April and they could turn things around. But God almighty, they've lost their last 8 games. They've lost 9 of their last 10. They're 7-19. They've played 26 games and have lost 19 of them. Only the Royals are keeping them out of the cellar right now. And you can't fire the manager. Not now. You can't bring in a new manager and preach we're going to have unity with the front office and the field manager and give him less than a month. He has to get the whole year, unless it looks like they're going to go on to a 120 loss season. But right now their winning percentage is 269. Now they're not going to finish with a 269 winning percentage. It is going to go up from there. But do you know what that would be? That would be a 43 and 118 season. And pretty soon we won't be able to have the caveat of it's only April. Eventually there's going to be May, and that'll be actually at our next show. But in the next segment, we are going to talk about that crazy game with the Angels and what that means. But I do want to say one thing. I used one of our products. I used one of the products that we are presenting here, and it was not Built Bar. I want to go to the last Oakland A's game. Assuming they're going to be playing in the minor league park in Las Vegas next year, I want to see the A's away. I hope they find a way to stay. I hope they take this horrible ownership and start again. But either way, I wanted to go to the Oakland Coliseum and see the Oakland A's for the last time. And guess what I did? I used Gametime. That's right. I used Gametime because Gametime is the fastest and best way to get your tickets. And it was not stressful at all. It's the fast and easy way to get all the tickets for your sports, music, comedy, and theater near you. I went on my app. I looked up the final game in Oakland for this year. There were tickets available. I bought my tickets, and I say, I'm going to be there. If that's the last chance to see the Oakland A's, I'll be there. And it already was a sense of adrenaline, a sense of, oh, my God, I'm going to see this. I'm going to see this. But there was none of the nervousness about still is they going to be a good ticket. I got to see where the seats were. I got to see the view from the seats. This is not exactly the last minute situation. There's a game taking place in September, but if you need last minute tickets and get their best price guarantee, you could stop stressing over tickets and just think about all the fun you're going to have. Now, I did plan months in advance, but you don't have to. Gametime has deals right up to the day of the event, and it means you'll always get the best price. I got a really good solid price to see that final game. And if you find tickets in the same section row for less, Gametime will credit you 110% of the difference. And I got to see the view from my seat in the Oakland Coliseum. I know exactly where I'm going to be when I arrive. And guess what? I bought it in a matter of seconds, and it's on the tickets are on my phone. Directly to my phone. I don't have to dig through a bunch of emails. They're there. So guess what? Snag the tickets without the stress with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. I got the $20 off my first purchase. It was great, and it works. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets and the lowest price guaranteed. And farewell, A's. Now, as I mentioned in the last ad read, I'm going to go to the last Oakland A's game at the Oakland Coliseum. That's going to be in September. It'll probably be a bittersweet day being around A's fans. I hope the stadium's packed. I hope they say goodbye in the proper way And I hope everyone gives a middle finger to the ownership, because they really, I mean, that's a topic for a whole other podcast of how they ruined them. But another franchise that I seem to be picking on a lot, and I'm picking on them because I want them to do well. The Angel fans think I hate them. I don't hate them. I don't hate the Angels. I'm a huge Mike Trout fan. I'm a huge Shohei Ohtani fan. I want to see them in the postseason. And they've won some dumb games. I'm sorry, they've lost some dumb games. And I'm looking at it going like, are you kidding me with this team? That this is a team that has the consensus 2 picks for the MVP. All due respect to Aaron Judge, who, by the way, is injured. We'll get to that a little bit, because if the Yankees remove Aaron Judge from that lineup, but today was a day, as I kept seeing the scores coming on. Of course, I couldn't watch it because the Anaheim Angels get blacked out in Pasadena. Go figure. They're not even in our county. Blackouts. I'll eliminate all blackouts. Not the point. I got a young boy in my class who wants to watch the Dodger game, and I can't. Let's get right back down to the point. I saw at one point in the 3rd inning, the Angels had a 5-0 lead, and Shohei Ohtani was throwing a perfect game. And I thought to myself, wow, this is the world we live in. This is the world we live in. That Ohtani's got, I thought, of course he's going to throw a perfect game. Of course he's going to throw a perfect game. And then I went back to teaching and everything, and a little bit later, I looked up and I saw that it was 8-5, that the A's scored 5 runs to tie the game, getting a couple of home runs, but the Angels scored a couple of runs, and now it looked like Ohtani was not going to throw a perfect game, but he might hit for the cycle. Again, it was just clear something historic was going to happen with Shohei Ohtani. And I went from looking, doing perfect game watch to cycle watch, all the while trying to hit all the marks of our curriculum. And he wound up getting the single and the double and the triple. And he hit a deep drive to center field. And by the way, I wanted to reach in and give the Angels announcer a nice little pop in the chops, because they called it as if it was already gone. And I raised my arms up to say, he did it. He hit for the cycle. And it was caught at the warning track. He came up just short. But I'll tell you another thing that happened. The final score was 8-7. And the Angels are lucky with a capital lucky, that they won that game. There was a play at the plate in one point. Anthony Rendon made a terrific catch on a line drive that would have been a game-tying double. The final score was 8-7. And part of that 8-7 included a couple of errors on the infield, a balk, all these, and when they made the errors and the balk in the same inning to put the tying go-ahead runs in scoring position, I remember sitting back thinking, they've got to fire Phil Nevin right now. They have to fire the manager now, in mid-game, because they're on the verge of losing the game and the series to the low. Or actually, we're going to lose the series. It would have been a series split with the A's, but that's like losing a series. And to the A's, who have lost at the time 20 of their first 24 games. I'm thinking, you got to fire the manager, because not only are they losing dumb games, but they're losing them with sloppy play. And you saw that in the previous series. Bad infield defense, bad base running themselves out of games. And if that line drive wasn't caught by Anthony Rendon and the A's took the lead, I would say there's no reason to have this guy keep his job. He was only there because they fired Joe Madden. They needed an interim manager, and he happened to be sitting right there. Call Roberto Kelly. Call someone who clearly, Hensley Mullins. Call someone who clearly should be managing baseball. Call Mike Schilt, who got Manager of the Year consideration a few years ago and actually won the damn trophy in 2019. Instead, the Angels held on to a razor-thin victory against the worst team in baseball in a day where Shohei Ohtani was throwing a no-hitter for a period and almost hit for the cycle. And they barely beat that team, even though they put an 8 spot up. And here's where April baseball is insane. Because despite all that, and despite all my crapping on the Angels all year for losing dumb games and losing dumb games, they're half a game out of first. Now, that says more about some of the underachieving of the Astros out of the gate and the fact that the Texas Rangers, remember when they were in first place? Well, they're in the middle of a 4-game losing streak, and they got, they got their lunch stolen from them by the Yankees in a clean sweep, in a series of which Aaron Judge got injured, and he may wind up missing this upcoming series. But or did I get that wrong? It was with the Yankees. The Yankees actually didn't sweep, and the Yankees played the Twins before. That's right. This is the first game of the series. I got a little mixed up. So the Yankees are starting a 4-game series, and they're not going to have Aaron Judge at least for the next couple of games. But this very real scenario could happen. Let's just say that the rematch of the World Series between the Phillies and the Astros, that Nola outpitches Valdez. Let's just say that happens. Nola's a good pitcher. He's off to a bad start. Maybe he's due for a good game. Let's also just say that the Yankees wind up defeating the Rangers. Now, it doesn't look good for game 1 because Clark Schmidt is pitching for the Yankees, and he is just there as a placeholder. And Jacob deGrom is pitching for the Rangers, and so far so good. Looks like he's not suffering from that injury he had earlier, and he's back to being Jacob deGrom. But let's just say it happens. It happens. We've had stranger things. So you have the Phillies winning 1 game and the Yankees surprising the Rangers. And then let's say Anderson outpitches Wade Miley. Okay, Miley's off to a good start with the Brewers. Anderson's not. But hey, it's just 1 game. The Angels win, the Astros lose, and the Rangers lose. Then the Angels will go into the last day of April alone in first place because they're only a half a game out. Now, again, way too much in the year, but it's like if they can at least psychologically get into May saying, hey, a lot went wrong. A lot went wrong in April. And still we're in first place. Maybe, just maybe, that could be that little psychological boost of, okay, let's imagine if things start to click. Rendon is back. He's got a couple of hits there. Oh, and by the way, they were wearing the hometown uniforms, whatever those things they're calling, the alternate uniforms with a different script of Angel and the red hat with the white front. That should be the Angels' normal uniform. That's so much better than the other uni, which has not been exactly been a good luck charm for them. I digress. Despite all the bad things that have happened to the Angels, first place going into May is just a few, albeit unlikely games away. Well, for the final segment, we're going to do a quick little preview of what to expect in this weekend, and I give tribute to one of my favorite fellow baseball fans, at least one from when I was younger. But do you know what? When I was younger, I always pretended to be a baseball general manager. I did it through my young years, my teen years, even my 20s, right up until now, as I'm 27 years old. Shh, let me pretend. And I found the best way to be a GM, and that is using Ultimate Pro Baseball GM. It is the most fun game there is to play in terms of creating your own team. Now, guess what? It allows you to manage all the aspects of your franchise, playing through the seasons, leading your franchise and fans to glory as you build a historic dynasty in a simulation where you're responsible for hiring the right coaches, managing the team finances, scouting, drafting players, managing different personalities and injuries, navigating the franchise through free agency. It's a challenging and realistic game world. Ultimate Pro Baseball GM is completely free, playable offline, play on the go, play as you want, play in a Zoom call. I can't play in my classroom because you know what? That's a bad influence on my kids. Locked On MLB listeners get a 100% free boost to their franchise when using the promo code Locked On in the game store, so make sure to check it out. To download the game, just visit probaseballgm.com, scan the code, or look it up on the App Store. That's probaseballgm.com, the ultimate baseball GM, so start your dynasty today. Quick peek at what are the games going on Friday, April 28th, which is today. I get my day game. The Royals are the Twins. They're playing. Lopez is pitching for the Twins, and Twins are in first place right now. The Orioles, who are pretty darn good this year, and Rodriguez is pitching against Rodriguez. It's an all Rodriguez matchup between the Orioles and the Tigers. The Tigers have the edge because they got Eduardo Rodriguez pitching for them, and he's been pretty good so far this year. But the Orioles are 17-8, so let's see what they got. The Cubs and the Marlins rematch of 2003 and 2020. Marcus Stroman has been very good. Luzardo's been fine too. That's an interesting matchup. Is the Cubs are surprisingly above 500, and the Marlins are hovering around that. They're not off to a terrible start. We'll see what happens. The red hot Pirates are looking at the Nationals, and if they keep things going, and the Nats are off to a terrible start, if the Pirates keep on pushing, the Pirates do have a chance to be the first National League team to crack 20 wins. And they can do that if they win the series against the Nats. The Mariners' bats have been a little bit dead. They're taking on the Blue Jays, Castillo against Manoah. On paper, that's a really good pitching matchup. Even though Manoah's been slumping a little bit, he's been picked up by Barrios and Kikuchi, who, ironically, he picked up last year. I digress. Shane Bieber, not just I was it's Shane Bieber. It's Terry Francona coming back to Boston. Bieber's pitching against Pavetta. Guardians are playing the Red Sox. We'll see what's happening there. Also going on, I mentioned that it's going to be the Yankees are going to be taking on the Texas Rangers. You have what is a critical series in April. Braves Mets. Those two teams are probably going to be fighting for the division. So these games mean a lot. Fried is pitching, who's been terrific. Peterson's pitching for the Mets. One of those teams is going to win that series and look up and say, all right, picked up those games. We're going to need those later in the year. The Rays, the hottest team in baseball, obviously are taking on the White Sox, who are the coldest team in baseball. At least it's in Chicago, so we'll see what happens. And then the rematch of the World Series, as I mentioned, Nola versus Valdez. Angels and Brewers, rematch of the 1982 American League Championship Series. The D-backs and the Rockies, a rematch of the 2007 National League Championship Series. Kelly pitching against Freeland. And then the Reds and the A's, in a rematch of the 1972 and 1990 World Series. The A's pitcher has not been announced. An outside chance it will be me. And then here down the street, right down the 110 from where I'm sitting, May for the Dodgers, Flaherty for the Cardinals. Going into the season, this looked like an NLCS preview. Instead, it's two teams either at 500 or hovering around it. We've got a full slate of games. The Mets and the Braves are really the most interesting one because it has the best ramifications for the playoffs. And I just want to say it's April 28th, which is a special day for me because when I was growing up, there was a partner in my baseball card collecting, a partner in my wiffle ball playing, and a partner in all things in my life. And that's my brother, Ted, who is now a very successful television writer. You watch Riverdale, if you watch Star Trek Discovery, Supergirl, he's done a lot of great shows. We've worked on a lot of things together. We grew up reading comic books and watching baseball. As we both went our separate ways as adults, he kept reading comic books and stopped caring about baseball. I kept following baseball, and I couldn't tell you the first thing about comic books. But he was my partner in watching Red Sox games and collecting baseball cards and playing wiffle ball outside. And so even though he's not a baseball fan anymore, and I'm not much of a comic book reader anymore, I know that we still have that connection. So happy birthday to my brother Ted, who is a terrific uncle. He's the cool uncle, the uncle who was into, TV and comic books and, Star Trek and all these things that my kids love. And you know what? He's a terrific guy. Happy birthday to my brother Ted, even though you don't really listen to this podcast much because, do you know what? Talking baseball. Maybe he should do Locked On comic books. Maybe I'll talk to the good folks at Locked On. But anyway, let's have a fun birthday for my brother, a fun final weekend of April, because when you next hear me, we can't use the, oh, it's only April excuse. It will be May. It will be May. So follow us at Locked On MLB Pod on Twitter and Instagram. I am your pal Sully. I'm at Sully Baseball on Twitter, Sully Baseball Podcast on Instagram. Seeing how strange April baseball can be, and saying happy birthday to my brother. This has been Locked On MLB for the 28th day of April, 2023. I am your host, Paul Francis Sullivan. Please call me Sully.